Committee meeting to order. Would everybody please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless America.
I'm glad I remembered the words. Carrie Ann, roll call, please.
Yes. Anagnostakis, absent. Benelli? Not yet. Sutherland? Hines?
Here.
Kulisek?
Here.
Paduk?
Here.
Menuda?
You know it.
Yep. And Benton?
Here. Did Katie and Janet respond? I know I saw Janet at the other meeting.
Yeah, they did.
Okay, very good. Okay, so up now we have our O'Connor Davies representatives for the overview of the 2019 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or CAFR. Can I get a motion in a second for discussion, please?
So moved. Second.
Second. Hines. Nick, Chris?
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Nick DeSantis. I'm a partner with PKF O'Connor Davies. And with me this afternoon is Chris Koff. He's the partner. He was the engagement partner on the Orange County audit. You should have two documents or access to two documents. One is a spiral-bound CAFR report, as well as the PowerPoint presentation. And the PowerPoint we're going to put on the screen. If you don't have it readily handy, we're going to put it right up on the screen as well. What I'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, is first start out with the spiral-bound book. But what I would like to do is just take you to the opinion, which is page 1. It's probably about 6 or 7 pages in.
And Nick, before, if I could interrupt for 1 second, just I've been asked to remind everyone when they're not speaking, please put the mute on so that the feedback and interference is kept to a minimum. Thank you. Go ahead, Nick.
So our independent auditor's report appears in your spiral-bound book. And the first paragraph describes exactly what you engaged us to do. You engaged us to audit the financial statements of government activities, business-type activities, the aggregate discretely presented component units of each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information for the County of Orange as of and for the year ended December 31st. If we look in the middle where it says auditor's responsibility, you'll see that the financial statements of the Orange Community College, which is a component unit, the Orange County Industrial Development Agency, another component unit, and the Orange County Water Authority, a component unit, were audited by different auditors, but we've included them in our report based upon their opinions. If you look at the last line on that page, it says we believe that the audit evidence that we have obtained is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis of our audit opinion. And if you turn the page, on the top sentence, in our opinion, based upon the audit and the reports of other auditors, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the government activities, business-type activities, the aggregate discretely presented component units of each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information for the county as of December 31st, 2019. So this is an unmodified opinion. In layman's terms, it is a clean opinion. If you turn back to Roman numeral page 12, and you just turn back a few pages, you'll see that your finance department, and as well as your county, has been awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting by the Government Finance Officers Association out of Chicago, a national organization. There are only a few municipalities in the state of New York that receives this award, and Orange has consistently received this award for a number of years. So that's a credit to your finance team, the commissioner, her deputies, and her accountants. as well as you, the legislature, who have set the standards for which your department heads operate. So with that said, I think it's best for us to go to the PowerPoint now. And at some point, I'm going to revert back to the spiral book just to go over some footnotes, if that's all right with you. And insofar as the PowerPoint, I'm going to have Chris Koff start to take you through it. And my admin, Tony Gianelli, will be, I guess, putting it up on a computer screen.
Okay, and legislators listening, if you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand. I'll try and catch it as soon as I see it. That way we don't have to, keep going back and forth.
All right, Tony, if you could go to page 3 of the PowerPoint. What we have here is a summary of your general fund, the main operating fund of the county. What we do is we show 4 columns. We have the original budget, the final budget, your actual results, and the variance with that budget. And if you go to the original budget and you go down to the next to last number, you'll see $21,519,970. When you adopted your budget, that was how much you anticipated use of fund balance. So in a perfect world, you would have used 21.5 million of your fund balance. That's made up of 2 numbers. 4,290,000 is your encumbrances. Those are purchase orders that were ordered near the end of your fiscal year. The items weren't received, so they move into the new budget. And then 17,229,000 you appropriated when you adopted your budget in order to maintain your taxes at what you felt was the appropriate level for the county. If we stay on that line and move to the final budget, you'll notice that that number didn't change. So during the course of the year, you didn't modify or use any more of your fund balance. But if we do go up to see the original budget as adopted in the final, you'll see that they both, expenditures and revenues, changed by roughly $60 million. So if you go to the first line, your revenues began the year at 614 million. At the end of the year, they were 674. What that means is during the course of the year, you adopted and accepted grants from the state and federal government. The state and federal government are on different fiscal years than you, so you can't include those in your adopted budget. So as they become available, you, the legislature, pass resolutions to accept those grants. If we now move to the actual column, you'll see that you did collect 618 million of actual revenue, and where your original budget included 614. So it looks as if next to the final budget, you came up almost $57 million short. But again, that's due to the grants, because again, the fiscal years are different. Those grant funds roll over to the new year. And you'll see that by the expenditure level, if you look at the variance column, you came in 77 million under your anticipated expenditures. And again, what that means is that you were able to achieve savings in addition to not spending the grants. Now, if you slide down to the third column, in the third number up from the bottom, you'll see in brackets 231,485. That's the actual amount of fund balance that you used this year. So you anticipated using 21.5 million. You only used 231,000. So you returned to fund balance for future use 21,288,000. So the county had a very good year. I know it may not look like it with the negative number, but again, when you anticipate using 21.5 and only utilize 231, you're able to realize savings across the board. If we go to the next slide, we'll show you basically how you did that. So here's all your revenues. And if we just stay with the variance column, you'll see that your real property taxes came in about 165,000 better than anticipated. And that's due to the fact that you collected some older delinquent property taxes. So the finance department, in addition to collecting your current levy, was able to collect some of your old outstanding receivables. Your other tax items, which includes interest and penalties and sales of real property, did come in under budget by 981,000, and that and another line, sale of property and compensation for loss, down in the middle of the page, is because you had some properties that you were anticipate selling. I think you call them the reservoir properties, and you had a few others, And unfortunately, those sales didn't consummate by the end of the year. And I believe you have 3 or 4 that might be in contract now, but I'm not positive about that. But I know you did have some activity on those later on. Your non-property line came in 1.3 million over budget, almost 1.4, and that's where you have your sales tax and your hotel tax. So again, pre-COVID, you were having a very good sales tax year, and you came in over budget again. Departmental income did come in about 3.8 million under budget. A lot of that is related to your health, mental health, and social service programs. Again, as your usage of those programs declines and you spend less money, you also receive less money for fees and collections. Intergovernmental charges, again, what you charge other municipalities for service you provide, came in about 1.1 million better than anticipated. Your license and permits, you can see that there's 0 in on the budget, but your actual is 2,052,000. That's the casino revenue that you receive from the neighboring casino in Sullivan County. And that, again, is directly related to the miscellaneous revenue. You're budgeted for the money in miscellaneous, but the state required you to record it up in permits. So you have a negative variance on the one side, but a positive on the other. We already talked about the sale of property. Your interfund revenues were down about 900,000. State and federal aid, you can see, is under budget by 12 and 38 million. Again, that's grants. And also a combination of you didn't spend all the money in the social services and health program areas. So it's a combination of grant rollovers and not spending. If we turn to the next page, we can talk a little bit more specific about some of these revenues. I tried to pick out the major revenues, and you see that from the 7 or 8 I picked, that accounts for almost 85% of your total revenue. So your real property taxes we already spoke about. Interest and penalties, again, you came in slightly over budget, and that again is because you collected some delinquent taxes. Your sales tax, as I said, came in about 1.5 million over budget. Your state aid for the health department came in under budget by 6.2. The majority of that, again, is grant rollovers, and also you didn't expend all of your budgeted money because the usage in those programs, some of those programs had declined a little bit. The next 3 categories are DSS, departmental income, state and federal aid, and you can see that they came in under budget in total. And again, that's because you didn't spend all your DSS money. There's not many grants in here, so this is really basically you expended less money, therefore you received less money. And then you can see your other revenues, which is all your other revenues that you include in the budget, came in 42 million under budget. 25 of that was transportation planning grants that you've had outstanding for a number of years that you're rolling forward until you have the proper project to spend it on that you determine you want. So 25 million of that 42 is related to one line item. On the next slide, I just put together for your trends a little bit of the 5-year history. As you can see on the property tax line, your taxes for the general fund purpose declined year over year, and they're even less than they were in 2016. Your interest and penalties is fairly consistent at about 7.5 million. Your sales tax, again, pre-coronavirus, was growing nicely every year. And your state aid in the health department, you can see, was increasing. And you can see again on your DSS programs that basically you're holding steady on those revenues. Again, as we came out of the recession, you've been spending less money, but you do hit a certain point where you don't continue to decline because there are people that need the services. On the next page, I just graphed, some of those items for you. On the expenditure side, on the next slide, again, in total, you can see, if you look at total expenditures, you can see that you did modify your budget by the 60 million for the grants. And you can see that those are spread over multiple departments. When we look at general government support, you came in about 8.6 million under on the spending. Part of that was related to some grants that you received in Board of Elections and some other departments. But overall, you just underspent your budgets. You did a good job in not filling positions and eliminating unnecessary expenditures. Public safety came in about 13 million under budget, with the bulk of that savings in your jail and your sheriff's department. Health services came in 13.7 under. Again, most of that is grant related. DSS came in about 10.5 under budget. Again, that's just reliance on your programs has declined as the economy was picking up. Again, pre-COVID. Home and community services, 30.6 under budget. 25 of that is those planning grants that we spoke about. So 25 million of that is related to grants for multiple years that you've been rolling forward, waiting for the appropriate project. So all in all, as I said, on the expenditure side, you came in under budget. And overall for the county, you can see again that last number of $231,000 or 21.3 better than you anticipated. The next slide, again, just because social service is such a major portion of your budget, you can see that the bottom, that the local share for the last few years has remained pretty consistent at about 123.6 million. Roughly about a third of what you raise in local property tax and sales tax to operate the county goes to run your social service programs. Again, the next slide is just a graph of those numbers, just so you can see how they flattened out really since you came out of the recession. On the next page is your balance sheet for the general fund. We won't talk about every line item, but I think that what you should note is that in the 2019 column, you have $57.8 million worth of investments. And that's because your finance department, for the first time in a long time, was able to receive more interest by going out to competitive bid on CDs than they had by using the current investments. So you did maximize your interest earnings, and you earned more money in interest in past years. You can see that your taxes receivable, as I said, went down a little bit, about $3 million. And again, that's due to better collections by the finance office. I think the area where you should be slightly concerned, I shouldn't say concerned, or put your attention to, is the state and federal aid receivable. You can see at the end of 2018, it was about 51.4 million. That's grown to 63.9 million. And again, you just have to be wary of the fact that you want to make sure that you're on top of your receivables and the state and federal government are paying you what they should in a timely fashion, or else your cash flow suffers.
Yeah, or when they change the rules.
Halfway through the year. And then when we get down to the next to last line, which is your fund balance, you'll see that your fund balance went down from 88.56 million to 88.33 million. So again, that's at 231,000. Your unassigned did go down from 56.6 to 54.9 million, but you still have almost 55 million of fund balance available to handle what's occurring currently in this year. The next slide is your fund balances and the various, as Nick likes to call them, buckets. So we have your non-spendable. The prepaid is your retirement. The state is on a different fiscal year. So when you paid your bill early to take advantage of the discount, that created a prepaid. So you prepaid the first quarter. That's 4.7 million. You have restricted funds, about $5 million, where either the legislature or legal requirements have required you to restrict those funds. You've committed about 790,000 at your discretion for these purposes. So you have 500,000 put away for future Medicaid expenses. Then we come down to your assigned category, and you have encumbrances of about 2.8 million. Again, purchase orders where they weren't fulfilled by the end of the year, and we had to roll them forward. And then during this year's budget process, you adopted 19.9 million, again, to maintain your taxes at what you felt was the appropriate level for the county. The next slide, I really don't think we have to discuss because I think most of you already talked about it. It's Valley View. So that concludes my slide presentation. Nick, I think you're on mute.
Thanks,
The
Chris.
only slide that I would take you, the slide I would take you back to is that fund balance slide for 5 years. It's on page 12. So,
Okay,
Chris,
page 12, everyone.
Yep. So you can see your tax stabilization, those funds in the restricted category, you've pretty much kept those at a consistent level. The future capital projects monies, you started out at 2.1 million in 15, and now you're down to $500,000. And if you looked on the balance sheet, the general fund actually advanced $28 million to the capital fund. And at some point, when you issue your borrowings, bonds, those monies will get repaid. But as of December 31st, $28 million has been borrowed by the capital fund from the general fund. If you look at your in the committed area, you'll see the infrastructure loan program. There's been no activity on that line at all, and I know that was an initiative by the county executive. I don't remember which one, but it was an initiative. But that has remained relatively inactive insofar as the fund balance. Monies may be coming in from other sources, but you haven't had a dip into the fund balance for that. The future Medicaid expenses, it can't hurt at some point to revisit that line. Right now, the state still maintained a cap on annual increases in the Medicaid area, but unfortunately, with the situation on state aid and revenues, I hope you don't have to dip into that line in the future to appropriate it. In the past years, we did have money set aside for state retirement, and at one point, you were even considering putting some cash reserves into the post-employment benefit line. But again, the state has not set up a trust fund similar to the pensions, so it doesn't make much of a $500,000 against $100 million or more. Doesn't make much of an impact. So the definitions for all of these accounts, or the 5 categories, the 5 buckets, appear on page 44 and 45 of the spiral-bound booklet, and it's it gives you a very concise definition of all those categories and the role they play in your planning. If you look on page 47 of the spiral-bound book, page 47 refers to the property tax limitation. All the counties in the state of New York are, by the state constitution, are entitled to raise property taxes annually in an amount of 1.5% of their 5-year average full valuation of taxable real estate. You can see that in that first paragraph, that calculation would have enabled you to raise $468 million. In the 19 budget, you only raised $80 million for the purposes. But this contributes to your bond rating and allows the rating agencies to assess the monies you've set aside, the taxing power that you have at your disposal to keep your municipal services funded at the level that you want to keep them out without running into a crisis. If you go to that third paragraph, we get into the tax levy limitation law, which is the so-called 2% limit, which is going to be far lower than 2% this year. I think it's 1.6%. And you see the last sentence there, that the only way that you can break that tax levy limitation is by a 2/3 vote of your legislature, as well as having a public hearing. There's a whole process that goes through with that.
Hey, Nick?
Yeah?
Yeah, if the 2% this year is 1.6, that's not so bad. Before, it's in a historical fact, it's been under 1% sometimes.
Yeah, I thought I read recently that it was 1.6%, but maybe Karen or the budget director.
We'll ask Debbie.
Yeah, might know that answer right off her head. On page 48 at the top, the capital projects funds, the deficits. Again, the deficits are occurring because you borrowed funds from the general fund to fund your projects. And incidentally, if you look on page 99, you have a very detailed list of all your capital projects. Starts on page 99 of that spiral-bound book. And your finance and budget departments keep track of all your capital projects, how they're financed, how much money is being spent. So you can refer to any of those areas. What we suggest is that at some point, if there are deficits in any of those projects and you've exhausted your funding for them, that you start thinking about how you're going to mitigate the deficit in any of those particular projects. If any of those deficits are funded as a result of the borrowing from the general fund, when you issue your general obligation bonds, they would automatically go. But the deficit would be mitigated. But if you've already issued the bonds for the projects and still have exceeded the original appropriation, you need to resolve that deficit in the capital fund. On page 54, I'd just like to point out to everyone your general purpose obligation bonds payable. You'll see that in the column all the way on the right, in the middle of the page, you have $279,525,000 of general obligation bonds outstanding, and at the chart below that, you have the amount of principal and interest you would have to budget on those bonds, not on any new bonds, in each of your budgets. And then after 5 years, it aggregates into 5-year time frames. Incidentally, Mr. Chairman, yeah, go ahead.
Can we go back to page 53? It was a big, I thought it was, at least it should have been a big topic for the Valley View financial review. The OPEB of the county.
Yeah.
Just notice everybody should know that our OPEB responsibilities for the county-wide force is over $900 million, and it was $169 million hit last year just in that.
Yep,
Is that correct?
It's actually $1,173,000,000. If you look on page 53 and you look at the second column in from the right, you'll see that number there where it says other post-employment benefits. Payable.
Oh yes, okay, I see it. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually,
so it's over $1 billion. That is not make-believe land.
Yeah, and I was going to refer you also to page 66, which actually shows you the head count of inactive employees, which means probably retirees, 1,915 that make up that OPEB liability, as well as active employees who have vested their health insurance benefits of 2521. So altogether, you have 40% of your folks are retired that are part of that calculation.
Yep. That's a huge amount.
Yeah. Well, again, you're on a pay-as-you-go basis, and I would hate to see how much money you would have to raise in taxes to fund that OPEB liability on a present value basis. Again, on page 72 is the footnote that just details all your fund balance, and it has it broken out, particularly the assigned category, where you have the purchase orders by detail. Purchase orders, general government support, education, public safety, health, right down the list. So that gives you a breakout there. You have some special revenue funds. There's a description on page 100, right before page 109. Your county road fund, your road and machinery fund, your sewer district fund, your airport fund, your sanitary landfill fund, off-street parking fund, workforce investments, small watershed, and your debt service fund. And the fund balance information appears on the following pages. There's a detailed one on page 111, And we see that there are some small deficits in off-street parking of 5,765 and workforce investment 38,327. So those are some items that you're going to have to address going forward, as to how you might want to just deal with those deficits in those funds. But basically, that pretty much takes you through your financial statements. Your financial condition is very good. The fund balance level that you maintain is good. In 19, you had a budget surplus of about $21 million. Most of it was the not spending the amount of fund balance that you thought you would need when you adopted the budget. Of course, you used, again, almost that entire amount to balance your 2020 budget. And 2020 budget, of course, at this moment, many municipalities don't know exactly where they're going to finish because they don't know what the situation is going to be with state aid that they're entitled to, when the economy is going to reopen to the extent that you're going to collect your sales tax, your mortgage taxes, some of your fees, your building permit fees, general economic activity. With that said, Mr. Chairman, Chris and I will entertain any questions that anyone has.
Okay. Yes. Well, fortunately, Orange County is in a better financial position than probably 98% of the rest of the state. So we have to take some credit for that. Can you get rid of the PowerPoint presentation from? Yeah, because now I can see if people put up their hands and want to speak to ask questions. Thank you. Okay. Questions from committee members or other legislators present? I don't see anybody raising their hands, but here, maybe Ms. Tortel, is that you? (325-3484). You popped up on my screen. Did you want to ask a question? Oh, maybe that's Carrie. No, I'm sorry. Any questions? Anybody?
Well, if anyone,
Okay.
anything comes to mind for anyone, Mr. Chairman, both Chris and I are available. If they have any questions, if they can direct them through you, that would be more efficient for us, I think.
That would be great because, yeah, they come to me and then I'll have Gene submit them so that everybody knows them and then get the answers from you and resubmit those. So thank you, gentlemen and ladies, for all of your work. Thank you for the presentation and monitoring the computers and such for me in the meeting today. So if there's no other questions, a motion to adjourn is in order.
Again, I'd like to thank Karen and her team. It was very difficult to do the audit on their part by doing it remotely. And I got to tell you, they handled it very well. And we appreciate the effort that they put in and the hours they put in to assist us.
Yeah, we have a great finance department and budget department. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? And thank you, Tony, for all you do in Nick's office when I call with emergencies.
Sure thing, anytime.
Okay, if nothing else, a motion to adjourn, please.
Sutherland?
Thank you. Second? I'll second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Carried. Thank you, everyone. We'll talk again next week. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you,
Rick.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Wayne. Take care.
Thank you, everybody. Be safe.